Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a group of young volunteers is using song and dance to help thousands of displaced children cope with the trauma of war. U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump moved closer Tuesday to a rematch of their 2020 presidential election, with victories in party primary elections across the country. And in our technology report, we explore the possibilities of using artificial intelligence to fight corruption in Africa. Tech correspondent Paul Ndiho speaks to Dr. Sombo Muzata. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The city of Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo hosts displaced people from Sake and the surrounding villages. More than 60,000 displaced people have joined thousands of others in several camps around Goma. Faced with difficult daily challenges, many young people of Goma are surrounding children with song and dance to ease their trauma, then giving them porridge and cookies to prevent them from going hungry. Zanem Neti Zaid has more.
Songs and dances are used to heal wounds in the hearts of these children who have fled their villages and are now living in the Bulengo Internally Displaced Persons Camp. AGIRRDC is an organization of young volunteers who arrive early in the morning to give the children a smile.
I come here to the camp to sing and look after these children. There is no salary that motivates me to do this work, but what motivates me is the joy they give off. When I see them smile, that's what makes me happy.
Some young displaced people have begun to join the volunteers. Sylvie Baziga fled the town of Sake, 27 kilometers away, and lives with a host family in Goma. Sylvie says, having witnessed the horrors of war, she takes advantage of the company of these young volunteers to pass on messages of hope in the songs she sings for other displaced young people.
We're displaced people. We fled the war. I escaped safely. And to say thank you to God is to come and sympathize with my brothers and sisters who are in the camps. Through song, we promise them a better future.
These songs and dances are bearing fruit, according to some residents of the camps.
Dancing and singing with the children helps them cope after constant sounds of bombs that often traumatize them. When they dance, we see they have hope and we thank this initiative.
In addition to singing and dancing, the young volunteers, through voluntary contributions, give out porridge and cookies to help children at risk of malnutrition. On this particular day, the volunteers fear they won't have enough for all.
Today we hope to serve more than 500 children because many are hoping to come and take porridge today. We could serve between 500 and 600 children. The difficulty we often encounter is overflow because sometimes there are children we can't serve. There are also parents who ask us for porridge, especially pregnant women, which often means we don't have enough to give.
The young volunteers' help for the children comes at a time when humanitarian organizations and the Congolese government are unable to help all the displaced. In the camps around the town of Goma, displaced people are running out of food. There are also reports of some hunger-related deaths and disease outbreaks linked to crowding and poor sanitation. For VOA Africa, I'm Zanem Neti Zaid.
3 African women were among those honored at the White House this week with the Women of Courage Award. Viewers spoke to women on the streets of Kampala, Uganda, to get their thoughts on what Friday's International Women's Day means to them and what they would like to see change to promote inclusivity.
As an African girl, I celebrate the Women's Day because it means a lot to me. I have to go through a lot as a mother. I have to go a lot as a parent. I work as a secretary, and this has a lot to carry on.
It means being seen, acknowledged, and appreciated for the work that I do. In the bank, I sit on a number of tables, and most times I do a count of the number of women in the meeting or in the forum.
The cultural norms still operate despite new developments around, despite new education. The expectations on the woman still remain.
We are vested with the responsibility of nurturing, of raising not only our children, but also the children of the nation. So as we celebrate Women's Day, I want to challenge each and every woman to believe in themselves and that nothing is impossible. Things are only challenging, and what you think cannot be done, someone else has done.
I hope that I am representing the woman who is out there. I hope that I'm able to bring some softness, warmth, and nurturing, even in the boardroom. And that is why Women's Day is important.
Women's Day reminds us of our role, reminds us of the recognition that we have because of the role we play, knowing that you play a big part in nurturing and the impact we have on the society as a whole.
So believe in yourself and be able to challenge any kind of, hurdles that come your way, and you will be successful. Happy Women's Day.
Women in Kampala, Uganda, giving their thoughts on what Friday's International Women's Day means to them. At least 500 women and girls have been murdered in Kenya since 2016, despite the country's efforts to prevent gender-based violence, according to the Africa Data Hub, a regional network of data organizations that traces such killings based on newspaper reports. What is fueling the killings and what measures are being taken to stem the killings? Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori spoke to Rongo Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya, about the situation.
Statistically, it is the case still that more men are killed than women. But I think the concern of feminists in Kenya at the moment has been that we've seen a surge in very violent attacks on women, primarily by people who know them, intimate spouses, relatives, first-time dates. The thing that's very common seems to be two things. One is that the deaths are very violent. And in some cases have led to dismembering and beheading of young women. And the second thing is that the police have tended to be quite slow in terms of responding to the cases. Now, this is what has informed this particular thrust by these women in terms of the women's organizations that have come out on this issue. One thing to recognize is that it's almost 10 years since the Kenyan equivalent of the Me Too movement burst onto our streets with the My Dress, My Choice campaign. And that was really a campaign to make sure that public spaces were safe for women, particularly public vehicles, buses and matatus, as we say in Nairobi. So I think, this is another moment where I think there is a consciousness that something needs to happen. So this organization has generated 16 demands to the government. The first starts with the president to declare through an executive order a series of actions that would lead to strengthening safe houses, improving investigations and reporting and the safety for reporting, but also looking at things like, for example, where does femicide and gender-based violence sit within the ministries? And is there a specialized program that is leading to civic education? Because much of the violence is socialized, and therefore it needs a development program that actually ensures that the public respect well, let me put it this way, that men respect the rights of women, particularly in terms of their bodies, in terms of their thoughts and their choices.
Yeah. Now, some have also observed that it could be that this is a manifestation of certain other issues in society. Yeah. It could be frustration, but they react to certain situations. So what is the place of perhaps the economics and psychological issues among men and even women?
No, as Amnesty International, we would probably start off with a structural analysis. I mean, what you have to understand is that many households are crashing under the economic recession. There is a lot of mental health challenges out there. There is a sense of insecurity that leads to lower self-esteem. It also leads to a sense of entitlement and resentment towards others. And that these are all factors that need to be worked through in this civic education program that would hopefully be rolled out by the state with civil society organizations. There has been a tendency to, I guess, to look for blame in very strange quarters. So some people have argued that maybe this is the consequence of 20 years of gender sensitization and gender empowerment or women's empowerment. And that what we have now is a situation where a lot of men feel disenfranchised. They feel that they have become emasculated because there are strong, confident, well-resourced women that actually don't need them financially anymore. That's another argument. But I think that argument for me worries me because it ends up finding the blame on the side of the women, who is also the victim. And I think where we have to look at is what is the conditions that produces this toxic masculinity, this sense of entitlement over a woman's body that when rejected becomes violent. Why is it that our men and our boys are not able to simply say, you're not interested in me, that's fine, let me go look for somebody who might be?
Irongo Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International, Kenya, speaking to Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori. The U.S. has terminated the Zimbabwe sanctions program and reimposed curbs on 9 people and 3 entities, including the country's president, over the alleged involvement in corruption or serious human rights abuse. Larry Socha, the public affairs officer at the U.S. Embassy in Zimbabwe, on Wednesday briefed the press on the issue.
President Biden signed an executive order terminating the Zimbabwe sanctions program. That same day, OFAC designated 11 individuals and 3 entities for their engagement in corruption and human rights abuses under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. The Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act has not changed, but ZDERA is not a sanction. We've never invoked ZDERA to oppose international financial institution loans or debt restructuring. Our policy on Zimbabwe supports the citizens in Zimbabwe and its democratic institutions. That has not changed. But this is a shift in approach.
That was Larry Socha, the public affairs officer at the U.S. Embassy in Zimbabwe. U.S. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley on Wednesday suspending her campaign. The decision by the former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador follows huge wins by former Republican President Donald Trump in Super Tuesday voting. Haley, however, is not endorsing Trump. The U.S. senior Washington correspondent Caroline Presutti has the Super Tuesday highlights.
It is the biggest night yet in the presidential campaign, and former President Donald Trump comes out the victor on the Republican side.
We're going to make America great again, greater than ever before. Thank you very much. It's been a big night.
The former president won all but one of the states on Tuesday and leads rival Nikki Haley by hundreds of delegates. The former UN ambassador won Vermont on Tuesday and Washington, D.C. over the weekend.
The reason I'm doing this is for my kids and your grandkids.
On the Democratic side, President Joe Biden was by far the winner on Super Tuesday, except for losing American Samoa. The president released a statement asking Americans, are we going to keep moving forward, or will we allow Donald Trump to drag us backwards? Haley had hoped more voters, even Democrats, would choose her as an anti-Trump vote, but it proved difficult to get enough primary voters to adopt the strategy.
My primary concern this election is the preservation of America as I know it, which means leadership that is not Donald Trump. So whether that is supporting President Joe Biden or whether that is, casting a vote for a more moderate Republican, either achieves that goal.
Reg Mitchell disagrees.
Donald Trump, 4 more years if we can do it. The first 4 went well as far as I was concerned.
Younger voters are turned off by the advanced ages of the former and current presidents. First-time voter Donna Mendez chose Democrat Marianne Williamson.
I feel like Biden's getting too old to, run a country for another 4 years. And it would be nice to have diversity in the office, especially first woman president.
They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one.
With tonight's wins, former President Donald Trump could get enough delegates to lock in the Republican nomination as early as next Tuesday, when 4 more states vote. Carolyn Pursuti, VOA News, Arlington, Virginia.
Now for more on Super Tuesday and the U.S. presidential election, I'm joined by Todd Belt, professor and director of political management at George Washington University. Todd, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley has dropped out of the race, as we just mentioned. It's been just less than 2 hours ago, and did not endorse Donald Trump. Who do you think her supporters will vote for, Trump or Biden?
Well, I think they'll probably end up voting mostly for Trump. And the reason I say that is because most of them fear Joe Biden more than they dislike Donald Trump. She really didn't run a campaign like Chris Christie, where he said that Donald Trump is a threat to the nation and a threat to democracy. She ran a campaign more where she was talking about stylistic differences and how Donald Trump was the right person in 2016, but the wrong person in 2024. Remember, she went to work for him as the UN ambassador. So her break from him isn't as stunning as someone like Chris Christie. The fact that she hasn't endorsed him also doesn't mean that she won't. She might do that on the floor of the Republican convention, and this actually gives her some leverage going in.
And how soon do you think Donald Trump could clinch the Republican nomination?
Next Tuesday, not this coming Tuesday, but the following one, the 19th, is when we'll see enough delegates be able for him to clinch the 1215 needed for the nomination.
Todd, we're looking at a long trail of campaigns coming soon. So how, if Trump gets the nomination, how will the campaign look like between him and President Biden as we look forward to whoever is going to come into the White House next?
Right. It's going to be a very long campaign season, probably the longest we've ever had in terms of knowing who the nominees are going to be. And we know that Joe Biden has recently sharpened his attacks against Donald Trump, and he sees Donald Trump as being really the key issue for him. He's going to talk about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy, a threat to women's rights in terms of reproduction. And Donald Trump has started more of a campaign against Joe Biden, but now with Haley out of the way, he will sharpen his attacks on Joe Biden. He likes to call him Crooked Joe Biden and the crime family. The Biden crime family is the nickname he's given to him. But he'll also talk about immigration. And he will also talk about the thing he likes to talk about most, which is him being persecuted by the Biden administration and the Justice Department. That's what he really likes to talk about.
We're going to be treated to a little bit of political drama here. Todd, thank you so much for your insight into this. Todd, right. Todd Belt is professor and director of political management at George Washington University. Still to come, can artificial intelligence be used to fight corruption? We'll explore the possibilities after this break.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, we'll have an in-depth interview with the Executive Director for UNAIDS, Winnie Byanyima, and her efforts to elevate the position of girls across the African continent.
Today, there are about 100 million girls not in school. The majority of them are in Africa.
We'll also take you to the International Women of Courage Awards, where the US State Department is recognizing more than 190 women from 90 countries. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
On March 8, the world will celebrate International Women's Day under the theme Inspire Inclusion, emphasizing the importance of diversity and gender equity in all aspects of society. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will discuss what it means to truly inspire inclusion, how to speak up against gender bias, and how to forge a better world where women are empowered to innovate, lead, and inspire future generations. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Kenyan opposition leader Ekuru Aukot says he will launch a new court challenge to a plan to send police officers to gang-ravaged Haiti after the two countries signed a deal last week focused on fast-tracking the deployment stalled by legal wrangling. Gang violence has exploded in Haiti, killing thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands. Liberian President Joseph Boakai has issued an executive order to identify and recover stolen state assets and prosecute complicit current and former officials under a crackdown on graft launched since his January inauguration. The order will establish a task force that will have the legal mandate and state funding to investigate and retrieve wrongfully acquired government assets. And U.S. prosecutors are charging Peter Ajak, a prominent South Sudanese economist and Harvard fellow, with conspiring to export Stinger missile systems, grenade launchers, and automatic rifles to armed groups in South Sudan, according to the Justice Department. Prosecutors allege that Ajak intended to send the weapons to opposition groups seeking to effect a non-democratic regime change in South Sudan. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index for 2023 reveals a complex landscape of Africa's battle against corruption. The overall situation remains bleak, with the average regional score at 33 out of 100. For more perspective, Africa 54 technology correspondent Paul Ndiho joins me in the studio. Paul, could you talk to us about the artificial intelligence technology as a game changer in the fight against corruption?
That's right. Thank you, Esther. Many analysts believe using artificial intelligence to fight corruption could be a significant step towards more transparent and accountable governance system in procuring goods and government and services in government sectors. I spoke with Sombo Muzata, assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at James Madison University, to gain more insight on this issue. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You have written extensively about AI and how people are using this new artificial intelligence across the board. Let's start there. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence?
I think AI, artificial intelligence, is revolutionary. It's changing the way humans interact with technology, machines. It's also helping us to carry out processes that ordinarily would have taken a little bit more time to carry them out in a shorter time and in a very efficient manner. And I think AI is here to stay, and we have to learn to adapt to it being in our midst, regardless the level at which we are at as humans. So in one of the papers that I wrote that focuses on the use of artificial intelligence in the boardroom, I say that, you know, from the bedroom, when we wake up in the morning, some people will say, Alexa, and ask what the weather is going to be like. So from the bedroom to the boardroom, AI is being used across the board, and we have to learn to adapt to this new technology, and we have to learn how to use it in a better way.
I talked to a lot of people, and they're all skeptical about what this means for us going forward. But as I hear you talk, you seem to suggest that this is the future and we need to adapt.
I think it's in different ways, and it depends on the context. So geographical positioning becomes very important depending on which part of the world a person is. They may have different taking on the issue of artificial intelligence. Here in the US, most of our students are actually using some of AI applications in their daily lives. Okay. I think about Zambia, where I'm from, and other countries in Africa. I've traveled across the continent. Perceptions of the use of artificial intelligence are different, and they're different depending on how much information people have access to. If the information and branding that has been given is that AI is not good for you because it's going to take away your jobs, then people have a need to be worried, and they're going to be worried. But if we say that we can leverage on the use of artificial intelligence for us to be efficient and effective in the way that we do things, to better our services, and even to discover new jobs that we previously did not have, then you see the difference in the tech that people have on artificial intelligence.
We come from a continent that has a lot of issues, but at the same time, those issues could be turned into opportunity, especially artificial intelligence in healthcare, education, agriculture, in finance. Could there be a way that this new technology could maybe help advance some of these areas?
One of the biggest problems that we have is financial accountability. Okay, if we can try and automate most of our systems and cut out the middleman and have most systems relying and utilizing big data a lot, and having the ability to be able to retrieve, data at the time when it has to be retrieved, we would be combating one of our biggest problems, which is a lack of accountability as a result of weak systems and lack of capacity. Would actually be fighting corruption indirectly if we utilize some of these applications that are there. I know that in Zambia, AI is used in the mining sector. Okay, so for example, We've been doing mining for more than 100 years in Zambia, and a number of operations with big mining corporations are actually done by artificial intelligence.
You brought up a very interesting point. You said that AI can help in fighting corruption, but there are those who say, wait a minute, people who are skilled enough, people who know how to use these tools, they can figure out how to play with a system that so you don't detect that corruption. Now, could both be true?
Yes, I think there are scammers and there are crooks in every system. And I think you rightly said corruption is a global problem. When I talk about corruption, I don't want to put a tag on Africa and make Africa look like it's the bad guy or it's the place where, yes, we have a lot of problems, we have a lot of issues, we have a lot of problems because some of our systems are underdeveloped. But the opportunity that is there also is that we can have a lot more young people get trained in cybersecurity, in the utilization of some of this software, so that they can be helping to curb some of those attacks on critical infrastructure. And yes, we can work with artificial intelligence and data management systems to solve the problem of corruption.
Thank you so much for your time, Sombo.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Dr. Sombo Muzata is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at James Madison University. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Paul, thanks. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for his tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.